Our next card is a fun fold card. It's called a vertical stretch card, and it opens like this. I learned this fold from Rachel Tessman, and I think it works well to showcase these images. We get to do some really fun stamping here because we're doing two-step stamping, and also we're using the sponge daubers to combine ink colors right on the stamp. And we'll get to do 4 of those. Let's get the supplies ready. Okay, we've got our pieces for the second card. The card base this time is basic black cardstock, and it's 4 1/4 inches across by 11 inches in height, and there are several score lines. There's one at 2 3/4 inches, 4 1/4 inches, 7 1/4 inches, and then finally down at 8 1/2 inches. I also have Sahara sand cardstock, and this is 4 inches by 2 1/4 inches. This is going to be the message panel. I've got some designer series paper pieces to decorate our card. There are 2 different patterns, and each one is a 4-inch square. I'm using some of the ready-made die cuts that come as part of the designer series paper. So I've got this piece that looks like a torn notebook page, and then the arrow and several of the stars in the colors Cajun Craze and Crushed Curry. I'll make a total of 4 of these pint glasses and then 3 of the small foam pieces. Then lastly, I've got the rustic metallic dots to use for embellishments, and we're ready to get started. I'll start with stamping my sentiment on the left side using Memento Tuxedo black ink. Now I'll stamp my second sentiment onto this piece of the designer series paper, and I'm going to center it horizontally, but I want to stick to just the lower inch or so of this piece. So I'm going to use my grid paper here as a guideline. Each of these is 1/4 of an inch, so I want to count off 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to use a piece of paper as a marker here. That's not sticky at all, it just helps me to see what I have to work with. I'm choosing to put IOU1, but another round sentiment also works great here. Now it's time to stamp the pint glasses. I've got a scrap of basic white cardstock here because I'm going to stamp first and then die cut, but you can do it in the reverse order. I'll be stamping 4 of the pint glasses and then 3 of the small foams. I'm just stamping the foams, but remember you can use that Snowfall Accents puff paint if you would like. Now it's time to fill up those glasses. I want my ale to be darker this time, so I'm starting by inking up with Crushed Curry, and then I'm going to use my sponge dauber to add some of that Cajun Craze color to it. I'm picking up color from that corner of the ink pad so that I don't contaminate the middle part where I usually stamp from. I'm dabbing from the bottom up so that the darker concentration of color is going to be towards the bottom. You don't need to have the color all the way mixed in. In fact, it looks interesting when there's a little bit more variation. I'm cleaning my stamp off with a chamois in between because I don't want any of that residual Cajun Craze ink to get onto my Crushed Curry. And then I'm going to mask off this last one so that it's only partway filled. That's why it doesn't need its own foam. We can go ahead and assemble our card. Let's start with the card base. Now this is the one that's got those multiple score lines, and there is a panel at the top that is just a little bit bigger than the panel at the bottom, and it can be hard to tell the difference when you're just looking at it, so you might want to measure. But the one that is at the top is 2 3/4 of an inch in height. The one at the bottom is only 2 1/2 inches. So starting at the top, this first score line is going to be a mountain fold away from you. The second one is a valley fold towards you. Next one is mountain fold away, and then last one is valley fold. Now you're going to want to reinforce all of those with your bone folder. Let me show you what that's going to look like from the side. So a little accordion fold like that. This piece of Sahara Sand cardstock is going to be centered over this bottom panel. Next comes the piece of designer series paper that we had stamped on, and that is going to be centered over this panel here. So there's nothing on this next panel. We're looking for the next big one. And go ahead and fold it down the way it's going to be in the final card. That way you can tell that this piece is going to pretty much cover up this bottom section. This part where you write your message is going to be a surprise. So I'll go ahead and put adhesive, but I don't want to accidentally put it against the parts that are not going to be against this card base. So I'll put the adhesive directly onto the card base. I just want to make sure that I'm not too close to the edge because there's going to be 1/8 of an inch gap. And again, I'm lining it up so that it's going to cover that bottom part, and it should give me a nice margin all the way around, like that. So you can see so far how that's going to work. And then this last piece of designer series paper is going to go over this panel. And here, we're not trying to cover up all of this. We want to be able to see that sentiment. That's why we centered it on the bottom inch like we did. So here we just have to concentrate on getting a nice even border around the top and the sides. Next comes this little die cut, and I'm going to put it at an angle because I think it makes it look a little bit more interesting. And then I will add my pint glasses. When I add the ones to this panel, I want to stay above this part here, which is the bottom border of the basic black panel. That way I can make sure that these are going to stay hidden from view until the card is opened. On this last one, I'm going to put part of the foam towards the back just so that it looks a little bit different. And now I'll add those smaller die cuts. And of course, I can't resist adding a few of those rustic metallic dots. There's our finished card. We got to create our own custom color by combining two different inks, and then we put it together in a fun fold card that opens up like this. That was really fun to make.